Good morning, everyone. So, this is going to be the online class for airline and airport management module. And I'm going to cover the theory for week one, which is Introduction to Air Transportation. So, for this module, as I already meet you guys on Monday, these are my contact details where you can find me, how you can contact me. The most efficient way will be using the WhatsApp group. However, you can email to me if you have any concern further. And our class schedule, I think all of you are aware, we have two classes per week. The first class will be on Monday, which is for theory class, and Friday will be for practical class, where you will be using the Galileo travel pod system. So total there are 14 weeks. Assessment mode I already explained in the class. Anyway, I will explain again here. So we have mid-semester exam. It covers theory and it will be in week 7. You guys have class assignment. This will be a presentation where you are required to do a presentation on airline industry in some respective countries, which I will be list later. So later on you can find the guidelines in times, probably by next week. Field trip project is a practical exam where you will be doing it in week 10, like creating a booking for your client. So a case will be given, and based on that you will be booking the tickets and doing the necessary things using the Galileo travel pod system. And reflective learning, 10 marks. The submission will be week 14, and your final examination will take place in week 16, because usually week 15 will be your study break. So this is how the module assessment is breakdown, and you will be able to get the 100 marks according to this. So, chapter 1, Introduction to Air Transportation. So basically this is a very brief chapter talking about globally on air transportation. We all know that air transportation became one of the important sector when the tourism started to boost up. So it's actually start the late 20th century, when the development of tourism is rapidly growing, and when people actually has the value for holiday travel, when people have the disposable income and people willing to discover the world, that's where air transportation became more important. And in this chapter, basically we will cover globally about aviation environment, a little bit of history, as well as International Air Transport Association, IATA. Why? Because IATA is the main body which is releasing reports monthly, yearly, and concerning on the issues and challenges faced by the airline industry. So we will be covering a little bit about IATA as well. So as I mentioned earlier, the development of tourism is the main reason why air transportation became one of the important sector which parked under the travel and tourism industry. Mostly this is started to grow after the 20th century, and the demand and need in the market actually makes the airline business model to divide it into few varieties, I would say. And apart from the demands and needs, people also have disposable income, and they want to travel around, they wanted to learn new culture, they wanted to see new things. Actually, people's curiosity is the main reason for the development of this industry and for the rapid growing of this industry. So air transport, basically why do tourists prefer air transport are those advantages, and why they are not preferring air transport will be the disadvantages. So when we look at the advantages, obviously it is more compared to disadvantages. So some reason why people actually prefer airline to fly from point A to point B, that would be obviously because it's saving your time rather than using rail or using the cruise, because at ancient time people used to reach Malaysia by boat, which take 3 months plus, and now you can just take a flight which will take approximately 5 hours to reach your destination, so you can actually save a lot of time. It is most fastest mode of transport that you can get, and even the process is not difficult. Process meaning the way to get a ticket or to book a ticket is not very difficult. Now everything is digitalized. You can do everything by some clicks using your handphone. So it is very convenient and also comfortable. And airline also consider one of the safest mode of transport for most of the time. Yes, it is most safest mode of transport, and also it is a transport that provide amenities and facilities on board, which sometimes make the passenger more comfortable while they are traveling. And nowadays we can say that price is also one of the advantage ever since we have low cost carriers. So we can see that there are a lot of advantages compared to disadvantages. Another important advantage would be the connectivity, because if you take rail or cruise, probably it will just stop at a specific station or port. However, for airlines, you can see apart from the capital city itself, nowadays airline is actually having hubs in different cities, rural cities. For example, we can take AirAsia. AirAsia not only traveling to the capital city of Sabah, which is Kota Kinabalu, but it is also traveling to so as I mentioned earlier, another advantage is connectivity, where nowadays flights are not only connected to the capital city, but it is also connected to some other majoring city in a country, which allowing people to travel directly instead of transferring from point A to point B, then point B to point C, right? So when it's come to disadvantage, I think there is only one disadvantage that it can happen to the passenger, which is the disasters. But anyway, this is not in our control. If it's meant to happen, it will happen. So that is one of the disadvantage. Another disadvantage, personally, I think, is the quality or the hospitality of the staff who are working in the airline or airport. Sometimes they do not meet the requirement or the qualification, which also creating other issues and challenges. And another disadvantages, this can be from the airline perspective, where they have too many different business models nowadays. Okay, first we have national carriers, and then we have low cost carriers, and now we are having hybrid airlines. So the different business model is actually increasing the competition among the flight, which is also somehow influencing the people decision making process. So that can be advantage and disadvantage, but most of the time it being a disadvantage to the airlines, but it's an advantage for the passenger, like tourists like us. So the aviation business, when we look broadly, basically this is a business that involved with air transportation, where is a key component to the tourism industry, as I mentioned earlier. And in the 1990s, it has been categorized by exceptional growth because of the, when we look at the tourism history, we know that yes, the empire era, when the Egyptians start to travel, the Greeks, the Romans. So after the Romans, we have the Victorian era, and slowly we had like seaside resorts, spas, and that's actually being one of the reason for this growth as well. After the seaside resorts, spas and everything, we had our father of tourism, Thomas Cook. We came out with the tour packages moving from point A to point B, mass tourism and etc. So that actually lead to this exceptional growth, the demand and the needs from the people, and the market became increasingly competitive. Not only competitive, but they look into varieties, like different team, different concepts. So that actually lead the airline to to market their product in more aggressive way, and very vulnerable to international economic and political crisis. Yeah, this is something that we can't deny. The commercial air transport is a giant industry, obviously, and it is an industry that thrives on constant changes and challenges. Because if you guys look at the airline industry, if a flight once have an accident or issue, for the next few years they're going to face the um, a phrase which they are not going to get enough sales, or they are going to get more challenges in terms of not loaded fully and etc. So this has also happened to Malaysian Airlines when when MH370 is disappeared. So these challenges is something that is out of control, but if we have a proper risk or crisis management or the practices, somehow we can overcome it. I won't say that there is no risk in any business, but I would say that all the risks are able to overcome or minimize. So the necessary step has to be taken from the perspective industry itself. So the aviation system actually consists of few what we call few sectors. So I will name one by one sector. So the aviation system consists of aircraft manufacturing. So of course this is about manufacturing the aircraft and stuff like that. And we have the civil aviation, which consists of major carriers which travel domestically and internationally. We have regional carriers, which is like commuters. We have supplement carriers, we call it like charter. One of the example can be Berjaya Air, that is considered charter. And then we have cargo, right? And we have general aviation under the aviation system, and this general aviation is like private planes, corporate jets, air taxi service. So this is more on using for a specific issues or specific purpose. And then we have military aviation, and of course, as per the name, these planes and airbase are under the control of government for the national defense purposes. And we have airport operation, aviation support industry. So these are the six sectors that's being parked under the aviation system overall. And now we are looking into the reduction of time travel, because we said that flight is one of the reason that actually one of the fastest transport, which is the benefit of traveling by the flight. So we didn't have Boeing 707 straight away, but we had few other airlines before we had the Boeing B707 in 1959. So before that, we used to have airlines that was used for other purposes. Then it is diverted into the commercial line. So I would say that from the period of 1500 to 1840, I mean 1840, the average speed of horse-drawn carriage and sailing ships were 16 km per hour. So you can see that it slowly increased to 25, and then to 450 to 680, and now is like, I mean, before the speed that we have now, we had 800 to 1150 km per hour. So the speed, the pressure, everything were increased slowly rather than it's happened at one point of a time. So growth of air transport happened or developed after the World War II, basically, because after the World War II, the surplus military aircraft was made available for civilian use. So this is because the reduction in the cost of travel as well as the improvement in technology. So before World War II, aircraft or jets were used mostly for the military or war purposes. And then aircraft became more reliable, larger, faster, safer, and of course it started to contribute to the economic of a country, and obviously indirectly to the society as well. Cost of air transport influence cost of tourism product and choice of destination. This point is extremely important because if you guys look at I'm not giving example internationally. I try to give example more within Malaysia, so it's easy for us to understand as well. If you look at this point, in Sabah we have beautiful islands. In fact, those islands are extremely famous for diving and snorkeling. If you guys heard about Sipadan, Mabul, Kapalai, all these are famous island names where you can find diverse of marine life over here. And all this island actually located in a city called Sempurna. And in order for you guys to reach Sempurna, you must take a flight from Kuala Lumpur and you must travel to Tawau. So Tawau is a small district which is located on the on the East Malaysia towards the eastern point. So if you want to go to this Tawau from the capital of Sabah, which is Kota Kinabalu, it's gonna take like I think around 8-9 hours. So if you notice here, because of the availability of direct flight to Tawau, now people no need to go to the capital city and then fly from there to Tawau. And because of people know that Sempurna is famous for diving, and because of they know there is a direct flight from KL to Tawau where they can reach Sempurna within 1 hour, that actually influenced their choice, right? So just imagine if there is no flight that is going straight away from KL to Tawau, probably they would never think they want to go Tawau. They would think that okay, I just go to the capital, which is Kota Kinabalu, I spend 4 days there, then I go back home. But because of there is a flight directly to Tawau, now they are thinking that they can go to Sempurna for a different activity or purposes. So the cost, the connectivity actually influence the decision making of a people. And when we look at the cost, based on my master research study, the cost of the airline is the most important factor that is affecting someone when selecting an airline. However, people also aware that the more they pay, the more service or facilities they get, and the less they pay, the less service and facility they get. And that's the reason people are willing to switch the airline from national carrier to low cost carrier according to the need of their budget. So we can see that cost is being the most important factor in making decision. Also, this cost is somehow giving the passenger satisfaction, which is also make the airline ranking different, because the more satisfied customer you have, the more quality product you are offering. So somehow it is also help the airline to rank them as a best service provide airlines. The last point is increase in international tourism greatly influenced by increased in-flight provision. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, the more flight you have, the more connectivity you have, definitely the more people you will have. And this allow the international market to explore your country more deeper because of the connectivity that you have to the different part of the country. Okay, air flight history. This is something we cannot ignore, because we all know that Wright brothers, who were the one that introduced the flight or the first flight in 17 December 1903. So because of them, now we are having the Boeing, the charter, the taxi, whatever that we call now, we have it, everything is because of them, because of their experiment. So at Kitty Hawk, North California, Orville and Wilbur Wright launched the aviation age when Orville made the first controlled sustained flight in a motorized, which is heavier than aircraft, right? So this is something we should not forget. And while that famous first flight lasted less than a minute, it changed the transportation world forever. So you guys, this is something we really need to remember, because every time when we do something, we never tend to look at the history. But history, if you didn't know the history, there's no point of you are knowing any current issues right now, because history is what going to give you the idea of how things have changed from point A to the point Z that we have now. So the first flight is only lasted for 1 minute, not even 1 minute, it's less than that. But now we are actually, having so many flights, so many destinations, so all thanks to the Wright brothers. And air travel has changed because, number one, the way people view the time and distance, because air travel actually make a change on people when it's come to time and distance. Example, you can travel a particular distance for a very short period of time, rather than using rail or cruise or ship, which I mentioned previously. Because if you're taking that, it's gonna be months or years, but now you can just travel anytime you want, any second you want, and everything is being digitalized. It's more convenient and comfortable. The world's airline industry now carries over 2.2 billion passengers. So this is actually statistics that is released in 2010. So now it should be more updated statistics, which I will show you guys later, right? And nearly 16 years after the first flight, regularly scheduled air service began in Germany. So this airline is actually known as Deutsche Lufthansa. So Lufthansa was the very first airline that was established after the first flight, which is the Wright brothers. After the Wright brothers is the first flight. So after their first flight, Lufthansa was the very first one that being established and still in operation until now. So it always take a place in the history, and therefore if you look at the journal articles or books about airline, you never fail to see Lufthansa is there, because every airline is being compared with the first airline that was formed in the industry, which is Lufthansa. And Lufthansa is known as a national carrier. So we will look into the differences between national carrier as well as low cost carrier later. Yeah. Okay, and before we go into the early aircraft, I also would like to inform you guys about the first transatlantic passenger. His name was Charles Levin, who flew with Clarence Chamberlain non-stop from New York to Germany in the 1927, if I'm not mistaken. And this is actually right after Charles' first solo flight from New York to Paris. So consider he's the very first person who went for the solo traveling, seems. And we also have to know some other important statistics, like if you are interested on the facts about airlines, then you may want to know about the first flight of US airline, which is Warney Airlines, launched in 1920s, around that time. This is also was an airmail service airline, and the first international mail route was flown by Pan American Airways from Florida to Cuba, if I'm not mistaken. So Pan Am flew the first passenger on the same route on 1928 or 27, which took around 1 hour 10 minutes only, with just $50 US each way, meaning $100 US. So this was the very first US airline, and the very first route that US airline used is from Florida to Cuba. And US airline also expanded to international destination. In fact, now we can see some of the top national carriers are US airlines. And the jet engine is invented by England is named called Frank Whittle. So he's the one actually come up with the jet engine, which was actually used in military planes at that time. And the first American commercial jet was the Boeing 707, which is the very first jet engine commercial plane, right? So we'll talk about Boeing B707 later, because Boeing 707 is the very first jet engine commercial plane, and also it was operate across Atlantic. And we can see that this flight actually show the route to other airlines, where everyone else later on followed the route that was used by Boeing 707, which is across the Atlantic. And also this Boeing 707 is the main reason for the growth of international airlines. So we will look into that later in more details. Yeah. So the earlier aircraft, so before we go into the Boeing 707 or 747, it's important to know how actually the earlier aircraft looks like, or named. So the earlier aircraft was named as DC-1 or DC-2, which you can see in this picture. So it's known as Delta Airlines, and this is the very first aircraft designed for commercial travel and carried only dozen passengers, and average speed is only 240. So you can roughly calculate, or you can roughly imagine how would the airline fly at that speed. And the third DC flight was introduced in 1930, which you are seeing in this picture right now, and it carries actually 21 passenger day, meaning if they are going for a day trip, so it carry 21 passenger. When it going for overnight sleepers, it carry 14 passenger, and cabin not pressurized, and it's only flew between 10,000 to 20,000 feet above from the ground level. And the disadvantage of this flight is the during the air turbulence, because it's subjected to rough rides. And also this is the first money making plane in the history, and this type of flight was produced lastly in 1946, because after this we already have the jet plane. After this type of aircraft we had the jet plane. So the last DC was produced in 1946. After that we have jet airlines. Jet airlines, which you are looking at this picture, as I mentioned earlier, Lufthansa was the very first airline that was made right after the DC, and Lufthansa is still in operation until now. So that's what you are seeing in the picture. And other than Lufthansa, we also had other flights, which you are seeing again in the picture, like Lockheed Super Constellation and Tupolev GU-104. So basically you can see that the seats of number are very limited, and also it is not designed to carry as much as passenger like how Boeing can carry. So, introducing of Boeing 707, as I told earlier, the first flight was introduced in 1959, pure jet engine commercial plane, which is operated across the Atlantic. And this was the plane that, being a role model for others, doesn't matter in terms of design or in terms of routes. And it's lead to the growth of international airline, because after Boeing 707, people try to set a standard to the airlines. So in terms of the quality, facilities, the standard of procedures, everything was set based on this. So this Boeing is actually a role model for the rest of the international airlines. So Pan Am, as I told you guys earlier, the first US airline which have the wide bodies. So what they mean by wide bodies is basically It was introduced by Boeing 747 in the 1970s. It was quickly followed by other wide-body planes like TriStar, Douglas DC-10, Airbus A310. So as per the name, usually it can accommodate like 3 rows. So that is what they're referring to, wide bodies. So narrow body is a single aisle aircraft where an airliner which a fuselage aircraft cabin width typically of 3 to 4 meters. So the airline seats are arranged 2 to 6, right? And abreast along a single aisle. Narrow body aircraft with a range not allowing transatlantic or transcontinental flights are commonly known as a regional airliners. So basically, compared to the wide bodies, narrow bodies carry less number of people and only have 2 rows which arrange from 2 to 6. So wide bodies is usually over 6 meter, which have approximately 3 rows, or 3 rows, and it can accommodate up to 11 passenger upgrade in high density configuration. So it's aimed to carry more passenger, and it's more broad, and usually will come with twin aisle aircraft. So the first wide body aircraft was the US airline, which is Pan Am, and as I mentioned, it followed by many other airlines as well. So you can see the 3 rows which have more space and more number of passenger, and you can see the seat pitch as well. Usually it will come with 232 or 242. So based on the size of the airline. And we had Concorde after that. So Concorde actually introduced in 1976, and this is fueled by Air France, France and Britain, and it has the capacity of carrying 100 passenger, and it is very limited in appealing, because we had very limited number of Concorde airlines at that time. I think it's 13 mentioned in the notes. And the reason why they have very limited number is because of high cost of operation, as well as high cost of development. And it is also restriction in number of passenger that it carry, and also there is environmental concern, because nowadays if you look at the airlines, they are moving more towards sustainability. So this kind of Concorde airlines environmentally gave issues like sonic bombs, limited its use largely over ocean. So, and also is grounded after 2000 crash in Paris, so reintroduced later but taken out of the service in 2003, because 2003 is the time where low-cost carriers are started to enter the industry. So Concorde Airlines has no more value at that point of time. And you can see the Concorde Airlines shape and structure is more like looks like a airline that ready to go for a war instead of transporting the passenger. And you see the sonic bomb, and this STOL aircraft. So STOL aircraft is usually for a short takeoff and landing. I think it's pretty much famous at Maldives, or because sometimes it is also known as not really water taxis. Okay, maybe Maldives is more on water taxi, but this is actually for short takeoff and landing, and decide to operate from small airports. So meaning that it carry less number of people as well. So I can give you guys example, like if you guys ever heard about an island called Flores, it is near to Bali. So if you wanted to go this Flores, you must take a flight from KL to Bali, from Bali another flight to Labuan Bajo. So Labuan Bajo is a small city which is nearby to these islands. So when you are taking a flight from Bali to Labuan Bajo, you will see aircraft are STOL aircraft, because it is for very short takeoff and landing, and it's usually operate from very small airports because it's closer to the city, and usually the runways are short or limited, and it is also eliminate the need to travel to distance airports. So it's like a taxi that transferring you from point A to point B, and very suitable for short trips, as I mentioned earlier, like 30 minutes, 40 minutes, less than 1 hour kind of trip. So the development in 1960s. The development in 1960s actually made the Boeing as a huge success as well. This includes the growth in international travel, obviously, and also the airfare started to decrease compared to the ocean liner fare. Now, if you guys look at the airfare and you look at the cruise fare, you will see that cruise are more expensive compared to air. So airfare began to cost less than the ocean fare. That's what they meant. And air travel was safer, and because there were very limited accidents happened in the past, so it was safer. And air bomb erased borders of Western Europe. Okay, this is again about the connectivity, or we call it as freedom of air. So this freedom of air is actually allow a particular airline of a country to enter in different continents or countries' border. So it's like the air travel actually removed the borderline. It removed the restriction of people traveling from one country to another country. Growth of chartered airlines, which allow people to travel more regionally, more domestic places, and it coincides with newly independent countries that were eager to operate their own airlines. Independent, yeah, because countries like Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia, those small countries also had their own airlines, and the development in 1960s, which include the new airlines that operated by those independent countries, actually influenced the success of the airline industry. Okay, flight length. Flight length can be divided into short, medium, and so we will look into one by one. Short haul is actually referred to a domestic flight which is no longer than 800 kilometer, meaning there is not more than 1 hour, 1.5 hours for flying time. So example, flight that is traveling from Kuala Lumpur to Langkawi, Penang, Malacca, Johor Bahru, all this considered as short haul. Flight from here, Kuala Lumpur to Kota Kinabalu is not considered short haul because it takes more than 2 hours. So usually domestic flight within a country are short haul. For us, it does not include the East Malaysia, which is Sabah and Sarawak. In addition to this creation, the destination airport must be in the same country as the departure airport. So yeah, it's the same country, mean domestic. Domestic flight can vary greatly in length due to some countries being larger than others. Example, Malaysia. You can see the West Malaysia and East Malaysia travel distance is almost as same as traveling from KL to Indonesia or India. Short haul flight is defined by Thomas Cook Airlines as a flight less than 3 hours of flying time. As we all know that Thomas Cook is the father of tourism, who actually came up with the tour package idea, hotel vouchers. He come up with round trip. He bring a group of people from point A to point B overnight. So basically every criteria that we have in the travel or tourism industry is introduced by Thomas Cook, which including the flight as well. So according to him, short haul flight is not flight is less than 3 hours. So yeah, right, so short haul, but as for now it should be less than 1.5 hours. So in the UK, the definition of a short haul usually less than 2,000 to 3,000, less than 2,000 miles, which is 3,200 kilometer in distance. So The short haul definition also differ according to the continent or the country because of the size, but for Asia Pacific usually is 1.5 hours lesser, so 1.5 hours is the maximum. Medium haul is a flight that fly between 3 to 6 hours. So this include countries like India, Nepal, I mean like Asian countries like Korea, Taiwan, most of it. An example would be between the United Kingdom and Egypt, which is approximately 5 hours, 5.5 hours long. So yeah, it can be considered as well. Any distance that within 3 to 6 hours. Long haul flights are usually typically made by wide body aircraft such as Boeing 767, 777, 747 and Airbus 340, and which involve long distance. Most of the time is above 7 hours, and usually they do not stop anywhere. So example can be Kuala Lumpur to Istanbul. The flight hours is more than 7 hours. So you guys can see the differences between Airbus 320 up to Airbus 380. So the name of the aircraft will define the size of the flight as well as the capacity of the flight and the characteristics of a flight as well. And you guys can go through this different aircraft with different seating arrangement, internal cabin range, and etc. And that's why when we are using national carrier or low cost carrier, there is a big difference for you to put your leg to stretch and everything. And most of the time people used to complain that low cost carrier doesn't have enough space for their leg resting area and etc. So what are the challenges that faced by the airline? In the 21st century, we will see airlines are facing many challenges. We already see now airlines will have to evolve in order to face these challenges. Profit margin will become narrower, reduce cost and increase efficiency. Okay, basically the challenges that exactly airlines are facing now is the very aggressive competition. As I mentioned earlier, there are too many business models in the industry, but currently we can categorize them into three, which is national carrier, low cost carrier and hybrid carrier. And these three airlines are using three different business model. I will give you one example. If you look at the national carrier, usually it is expensive, but it comes with services like included 30 kg meals and entertainment. If you look at low cost carrier, the price are cheap and you will be paid for what you are selecting, meaning that it's not all in one packages. If you look at hybrid like Malindo Air, it comes with cheap price and inclusive of some add-on activities, add-on services. For example, usually Malindo will comes with 15 or 20 kg of package allowances and a very light snack pack. So everyone is having competition and everybody wanted to reduce the price and they want to give a better quality. So now national carrier have to figure out how are they going to sustain in this industry. So most of the national carrier try to focus on business market. They are defining what is going to be their market. So it is very challenging because for business market, usually the company is the one paying their expenses. So every company would definitely want to pay for the cheaper price compared to the expensive. So now the competition is high. Defining the market, fulfilling the demand is really pressuring the airline, because at the moment airlines are expecting generation Y and Z is going to be the future passenger or future customers who are really very demanded and who are really influenced by high tech. So it's not only about the cost, about the quality, it's also about how advanced the airline is in terms of technology. So this is just to show you guys a rough idea of how Airbus 380 looks like you the seating arrangement, the overall aircraft and their technical names of each part of it. So you can see where the business class is located, first class, economy class, and where is the pantry, where is the fuel area, and etc. And so, how did air transportation contribute towards the growth of tourism? Uh, for this, I think we will discuss when we meet again on how it contributed, and probably in your final exam you will get this question where you are required to write more like an essay or more elaborated points, or maybe I would say more with critical and analysis kind of phrases you are required to write. So probably you may want to think about how exactly air transportation contribute towards tourism. Other than increase the tourist arrival, there are many other points that you can think of. So kindly think of some points over here. We will discuss this in our next class, and I will be opening maybe a Padlet link where you can actually post your answers over there. So what is a Padlet? Maybe I should show you guys what is a Padlet. Okay, so Padlet. I'm not sure if you guys have used before. For example, this is Padlet. So I will create a link like this and I will post this link in your Times, or I will post in your WhatsApp group so that you know the link. So basically what you do is when you click on the link, it will lead to a page like this, and you just double click on it and you can actually post your points over here. So it's easy for us to discuss in the following classes. Right, so this is all about chapter 1, but before I end the chapter 1, I would like to give a rough facts about how the airline industry is doing in maybe Asia Pacific. But let me think if I should give this now or I should discuss in the class. Okay, maybe I will just roughly tell, right? So, as I mentioned earlier, IATA, the International Air Transport Association, they monthly or yearly they will come out with a report on how airlines are doing, how they are contributing to the industry, how is the loading factor, the strongest region, the weakest region, etc., etc. So based on the very recent report which was released on the 2nd June 2019, it says that the strongest financial performance is being delivered by airlines in North America. And why? Because they hit 15 billion US dollar profit for this year, right? And okay, we don't want to bother about America, we need to know about our Asia Pacific. So actually airlines in Asia Pacific usually show very diverse performances, and is the most exposed region to weakness in world trade and cargo. Average profit per passenger this year is forecast at 3.5 US dollar, as weaker cargo and higher than expected fuel costs reduce net profit to 6 billion. So basically you guys can see that because of the very big cargo and a very higher fuel cost, it actually costs it didn't cause a loss, but it actually reduced the profit to 6 billion. So this is something that quite surprising. And when we look at Middle East, because Middle East is also part of Asia, so Middle Eastern airlines have faced substantial challenges recent years to both business and also the business environment and the models. The region is going through a process of adjustment, and announcement schedules point to a substantial slowdown in capacity growth in 2019. The performance now is improving, but the worsening is the business environment is expected to prolong losses in 2019. Okay, basically Middle East, how would I say? Okay, Middle East market are very potential market for other countries. Like if you guys are receiving Middle East market to your country, you are going to get a lot of receipt. Example, in Malaysia, if you go to KL around June, July, you will see a lot of Middle Eastern coming over here because Malaysia is one of the cheapest country to spend money, and you will see them. You will see that they do not mind to spend the money, and they are very active in traveling. However, if we are looking at whether we are going to Middle East or not, that is a very big question mark, because usually it's always always is a transit place rather than a visiting place. If you look at Emirates, Qatar, Etihad, they will stop by at Dubai, Qatar, and different part of Middle East, but it's for the transit purpose instead of to visit their country. So that's the reason why they are saying that most of the time both environment and models is usually expected to face the loss. So pretty much that's it. Maybe you guys also need to know the weakest region, which is Africa, continuously for 4 years. That is because the break-even load factors are relatively low. Load factors meaning the airline could not get enough passenger, meaning that because it is said that most of the African region national carriers are usually charging higher than average or lower cost. So usually the airline price is higher, and this is lead to the load factor, which is usually very low at a global view, approximately 60%. And however, it is also said that even though African region is the very weakest, but they are slowly improving their performance. But I would say that it is not because of the airlines, but it is because of the destination. Because generally, when we say Africa, apart from Madagascar, Egypt, Morocco, Kenya, we do not have a very good perspective or good opinion, meaning that the tourism product offering is very low, and I think that's the reason why the national carriers are suffering and they are continuously performing quite low. And also Africa is as expensive as US. So if I give you an option of you want to go US or Africa, you would pick US, right? So that's the scenario. So anyway guys, that's all about chapter 1. I hope somehow this is benefiting you. I know maybe this is not as the same as we are discussing in the class, but we have no other choice because we have too many public holidays, and probably you will be seeing few online classes, and we will do some discussion in face-to-face class for more understanding. Yeah, so thank you so much for listening this video, this lecture, and I will see you guys on next week Friday at Tourism Room 1 for your practical of using the Galileo travel pod system. And thank you. Have a good day.